Hello everyone, welcome to HFY Beyond Terror. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories, where humanity's underestimated and then proves...
Mara Klein dug the tip of her stylus into the slate tablet and traced the branching diagram. Dr. Vailrix had just spun into the air. Above the desks, the holodisplay hovered like a jellyfish made of light-glowing membranes. Little labels, arrows that pulsed when the professor emphasized a point. The room held 30 students and 30 different kinds of quiet. Some whispered in harmonics that sounded like bells underwater. Others clicked their mandibles softly as they took notes. A few exhaled scent markers that meant confused or interested or don't look at me. Mara had learned to ignore most of it. At 9, she was the smallest body in advanced xenobiology, even compared to the low-gravity kids who floated with careful dignity. She was also the only human, which made her a curiosity at best and a rumor at worst. She kept her focus where it belonged, the lesson. A gentle chime sounded at the door. Dr. Vailrix didn't stop speaking. Her 3 arms continued their elegant, looping gestures as she described the fermentation sacs of grazing megafauna from tempered garden worlds. She glanced up only because the door's second chime came less polite, as if the censor had decided to raise its voice. Then the professor's sentence broke in half. Something stepped into the doorway that did not fit the scale of a classroom. It was tall enough that its head nearly met the upper frame. Its shoulders were a slab of corded muscle beneath matte, charcoal green plates that looked grown rather than worn. A tail-thick, balanced, undeniably functional shifted with quiet control behind it. The new arrival's eyes held a faint ember glow. The room's collective instinct hit like a dropped curtain. One student's personal shield snapped up with a squeal of energy. A pair of reed-skinned twins pressed into the far wall, their pigmentation paling toward winter white. Someone made a thin noise and fainted neatly into their own lap. Dr. Vailrix, who had once handled a venom-spined marsh larva without flinching, stared as if an ancient fear had been printed directly onto her nervous system. Mara finally looked up from her sketch. Oh, she recognized the silhouette from the xenobiology texts, a Karak. Not the polite, museum-safe illustration version. A real one built by a world where the weather tried to skin. You and the ground tried to burn you, and everything else tried to eat whatever the weather left. Apex Predator, the books called them, as if 2 words could describe an entire evolutionary philosophy. Dr. Vailrix swallowed. Class, we have a new student. No one moved. This is Rock, she managed, voice thin. Transfer from the tactical sciences track. That phrase landed like a bolt. Tactical. The wing where you went if your species treated danger as a first language. Rock stepped forward. The sound of his footfalls was deliberate, heavy, measured, not clumsy, not swaggering. Just controlled. Like a creature that had learned long ago that sudden motion triggered panic in prey animals, and panic made rooms unpredictable. His gaze slid across the desks, scanning the way security cameras wished they could scan, not looking for faces, but for exits, angles, and intent. When those ember eyes swept past Mara, she felt a faint prickle along her arms, the odd sensation of being catalogued. Not judged morally, judged physically. Capable? Risk? Irrelevant? The only empty seat was the chair beside Mara, last week. The previous occupant, an airy, jeweled-skinned Arisian named Seln, had switched sections for family scheduling reasons. Mara had believed him. Now she suspected the family schedule involved staying far away from anything with a bite radius. Rock moved down the aisle. Students shrank. Bags tightened against chests. The shielded student cranked their field louder until it buzzed like an angry hive. Mara slid her own satchel off the empty chair and set it beneath her desk. No drama, no eye contact games. She went back to shading the organelle she'd been sketching. Rock stopped beside her. He stood there long enough that the room seemed to forget breathing. Mara finished one last line, then looked up. "You can sit," she said, like she was offering a seat on a shuttle. "Dr. Valrix is explaining cellulose digestion. It's kind of neat." Silence so deep she could hear the ventilation cycle. Rock lowered himself into the chair with care. The furniture gave a protesting creak that sounded like it wanted to file a complaint. He folded his long legs at an awkward angle, tail draped to one side, the tip twitching as if counting heartbeats. Mara nodded once and returned to her notes. Dr. Valrix blinked several times as if she'd been temporarily disconnected from reality, then forced her hands back into lecture motion. "Let us continue." No one learned anything about herbivore fermentation that day. They watched the smallest human in the room take notes and the largest predator in the room sit beside her as if it were normal. 3 days later, the station still hadn't stopped talking. Mara didn't even have to check the student forums to know the numbers. She heard them in the corridor: 17 formal complaints, 12 transfer requests, parents contacting the dean. She sat in her usual seat, reviewing yesterday's unit on symbiotic systems. Rock arrived exactly 2 minutes early, like clockwork, and eased into the chair with the same careful precision. "Morning," Mara said without looking up. Rock made a low, brief sound. She'd learned it meant acknowledged. Karak didn't waste syllables the way other species did. Dr. Valrix began a lecture on planetary classification. The holomap spun into life, lighting worlds by category: blue for aquatic, green for cultivated, amber for arid, and red for the dreaded label most species pretended was scientific and not emotional hazard worlds. A planet appeared. White cloud spirals over blue and green. Several students shifted. Some glanced at Mara like she'd suddenly sprouted fangs. "Earth," Dr. Valrix said. "Hazard Class 12. The hala shifted through images. A bear hauling a fish from a river. A crocodilian blur erupting from murk. A shark's dorsal slicing a wave. Wolves moving as one organism across snow. Earth maintains an unusually high density of apex predators," the professor continued, voice cautious. "Its dominant species evolved as endurance hunters, cooperative, tool-using, adaptable to multiple climates." Mara kept her face neutral. She'd learned early that any visible reaction became a story other people told about you. Then the hala rotated to a moon wrapped in smoke and firelight black stone scarred by rivers of molten orange. "Varos," Dr. Valrix said, and her tone tightened. "Hazard Class 11. The Karak home moon." Rock sat very still. Mara saw his claws flex once, leaving tiny scratches in the composite desktop. Not aggression, tension, the way some humans tapped a pencil when their name was on a slide. A reed-skinned student raised a trembling hand. "Professor, why does the Academy admit students from those worlds?" Another voice, sharper: "My parent says hazard worlders should be taught separately until they learn restraint." Mara felt something harden in her ribs. Rock made a sound like distant rockfall. Dr. Valrix lifted her hands in a calming gesture. "The Charter of Unified Education states that sapience grants the right to learn. Origin does not determine worth." The bell chimed for break. Students scattered like startled birds. In the cafeteria, Mara chose a table by the docking bay window where she could watch ships slide into their cradles. Rock sat opposite her, making the chair look ridiculous by association. Mara opened her lunch container. Spiced strips of cooked protein, sharp cheese, and a handful of bright fruit slices. The smell carried. A nearby group wrinkled their nose slits and scooted away. Rock's meal was packaged in sterile black film, heat-steamed cuts of something dense and iron-rich. He ate efficiently, teeth designed for the kind of diet that didn't ask permission. A trio of polished, glass-featured Alari drifted past. Their bodies caught the light in prismatic angles. Their uniforms were immaculate in the way wealth wore itself. One of them tall, with a crest that glittered, paused and looked at Mara's food. "How primitive," he said loudly, aiming his voice for an audience. "Consuming animal tissue. Typical of Hazard World stock." His friends made soft, chiming laughter. Mara took a bite, chewed, swallowed. She waited until her mouth was empty before answering. Her mother had drilled that into her. "Don't speak like a cornered animal." "Humans are omnivores," Mara said evenly. "We evolved to travel long distances, track prey, and survive by adjusting to whatever the environment offered." The Alari's laughter faded, uncertain. "My great-aunt used to work rescue in the northern ranges," Mara continued, still calm. "She carried people out of blizzards that would kill you in minutes. She once walked 3 kilometers with a broken arm because stopping would have meant freezing." The Alari's crest shimmered, a stress response. "Earth is dangerous," Mara said. "But danger doesn't equal stupidity. It usually forces the opposite." The trio drifted away without another comment. Across the table, Rock's ember eyes watched her for a beat longer than usual. "You understand survival," he said, voice low and rough like stone under pressure. Mara shrugged. "We grew up with it." Rock made the same rumbling sound as before, but this time it wasn't a warning. It was amused. They were crossing the commons during recreation period when they saw the ring of bodies. A knot of students had formed a half circle around a figure at the center. Valen, one of the Alari, the same polished crest, the same sense that the station's air was his by default. He'd been the one who'd sat beside Mora in xenobiology before transferring out. Now he looked at Rock like he was looking at a stain. "Korek," Valen called, his voice carrying. Conversations died. Recording devices lifted. "We need to discuss your presence here." Rock stopped. His posture changed so fast it made Mara's skin go cold. Not moving. Not relaxed. Coiled. Mara had seen videos of big cats doing that right before they moved. "This is an academy of culture," Valen continued, gesturing grandly to his gathered supporters, 15 at least, positioned just so near exits. "Standards matter. You, creature from fire and slaughter, do not belong among proper students." Mara stepped forward before the room could turn into a tragedy. She placed herself between them, absurdly small in the space between glass and claw. "On Earth," she said, "we have a saying. The loudest ones are often the most frightened." Valen's angles flushed color, the Alari equivalent of anger. "How dare you? I'm not insulting you," Mara said. "I'm describing what you're doing. You brought a crowd. You blocked exits. You made threats. That's not confidence. That's panic dressed up as tradition." The Commons held its breath. Valen's voice sharpened. "You think a predator belongs here? You think brute instincts can coexist with learning? You want to prove you're superior?" Mara asked. "Do it with your brain." She pointed toward the main display board that listed upcoming events. "The Tri-Discipline Scholastic Trials are in 2 weeks. Form your best team. Rock and I will compete as a pair." Murmurs rippled outward. Valen's crest glittered with calculation. "Teams are 5. Then you should have no problem beating 2, Mara said lightly. "Unless you're worried 2 Hazard Worlders might embarrass you." That was the hook. He couldn't refuse without losing face in front of his own carefully arranged witnesses. Valen's smile was thin as a blade. "Fine. When we win, you apologize publicly for disrupting Academy harmony. And when we win," Mara said, "you apologize publicly for your prejudice and stop harassing us." He extended a hand. Mara shook it. The Commons erupted. The next 2 weeks became a blur of study hours and stacked texts. Mara found what she expected. Rock wasn't just frightening. He was brilliant. Physics made immediate sense to him. The way vectors and forces behaved in strange fields, the way trajectories curved, the way a system could be understood by intuition as much as calculation. His mind snapped to it like a hunting reflex turned academic. Mara held the biology and chemistry side pattern recognition, structures, reactions, the story of life written in molecules. Together they covered the gaps that a 5-person team usually filled. On the day of the trials, the main auditorium overflowed. The competition broadcast to nearby stations. It wasn't just a contest anymore. It was a referendum with scoreboards. Valen's team arrived in matching formal uniforms, smooth and confident. Mara wore her standard academy set. Rock wore a simple corded sash with a carved clasp Karak tradition, he'd said. Honor matters where you come from. The moderator, an elderly Peltheon named Archivist Syrah, called for silence. 5 disciplines, Syrah announced. Quantum modeling, xenobiology, chemical analysis, applied physics, advanced mathematics. The first station lit up with a probability barrier problem. Valen's team huddled with devices. Mara read. Rock stared at the hala as if it were terrain. Interference, he murmured. Like heat shimmer over stone. It bends what you think you see. Mara's pencil moved. The insight clicked. They wrote, refined, submitted early. Correct and elegant. The xenobiology station presented a living specimen in a safe field. Valen's team began scanning databases. Mara just watched the creature's movement. Rock leaned in. Muscle heat concentrates here, he said. Ambush strike. Armor overlap is thicker on the dorsal ridge, Mara replied. Predators from above, so it's from a layered water world. They built the explanation from first principles and submitted before the database search finished. Chemistry favored Mara. She recognized the toxin's reactive pattern from Earth analogs and neutralized it with the right chain disruptors. Applied physics favored Rock. He solved a multi-gravity projectile problem in seconds, not by brute computation, but by spatial sense sharpened by evolution. Their shot hit dead center. The auditorium exploded. Mathematics came last. A set of coupled differentials under time pressure. Mara and Rock worked without speaking much, just short exchanges. Hand signals, the strange ease that came when 2 minds trusted each other's strengths. They submitted with seconds remaining. Valen's team submitted moments later. The judges conferred. The scoreboard tallied. Silence stretched. Then Archivist Syrah raised all 4 hands. Winner, Team Emberline, Mara Klein, and Rock. The auditorium detonated into chaos cheers, disbelief, arguments, laughter that sounded like release. Rock's hand settled gently on Mara's shoulder, careful as if he knew exactly how fragile humans could be and refused to treat that as permission to be careless. His mouth parted, showing all the teeth that had terrified a room of strangers. But the expression in his eyes was pure, unmistakable joy. We did it, Mara said. We did, Rock rumbled. 3 days later, the apologies were public as required. Valen read his statement like a machine reciting law. Correct words. Empty spirit. His team followed suit. Mara accepted it because the rules demanded it, not because she believed humiliation changed hearts. Sometimes it only fermented resentment. She was right. A week later, her tablet chimed with a priority notice. Mandatory Hazard World Placement Review. All students from Class 10 and higher worlds subject to evaluation for reassignment to specialized facilities. Rock read over her shoulder. They're moving the battlefield, he said quietly. Mara's jaw tightened. Then we move with them. She marched them to student affairs and sat in a chair that was technically too tall for her feet to touch the floor. Across from Director Hala, human administrator with tired eyes and a spine made of rules and experience. Holly listened, didn't interrupt, didn't patronize. When Mara finished, Holly exhaled. I can't stop the board from convening, but I can ensure student testimony is included. Let us speak, Mara said. Let the people who actually sit beside him describe reality. Holly nodded. Then organize them. Mara did. Students who'd studied with Rock, a prey species kid who'd stopped flinching. 2 aquatic students who cared more about math than fear. Dr. Vailrix, hands trembling but voice steady, offering her professional assessment. And then, the night before the hearing, someone stepped from a side corridor. Prismatic angles caught the dim light. Valen, Mara tensed. Rock appeared behind her like a shadow that chose to become solid. I'm not here to start a fight, Valen said quickly, hands raised. Mara didn't relax. Then talk? Valen swallowed. My family is pushing the review. They've influenced board members. I thought it was restoring order. He produced a slim data wafer. Communications, he said. Instructions. Decisions made before the hearing even begins. Mara stared at the wafer, then at him. Why? Valen's crest dulled, the gleam of arrogance replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like honesty. Because you beat me the way I claimed mattered, he said. With learning. And I can't unsee what that means. Mara took the wafer carefully. Valen turned and walked away before she could decide whether to trust him. Rock watched his retreat. Prey animals surprise you, he murmured. Mara huffed. So do predators. The hearing room overlooked the docking bay ships gliding past like silent arguments. 5 administrators sat behind a long table. Their faces ranged from stern to openly displeased. Mara sat beside Rock as his advocate. Concerned parties spoke first, polished, polite, carefully fearful statements about safety, about trauma, about appropriate placement. The language was civilized. The assumptions underneath were not. Then Mara presented their witnesses. One by one, students spoke about Rock's restraint, his help, his patience, his academic performance. Dr. Vailrix testified with trembling hands and unwavering eyes. Finally, Mara submitted the data wafer. The room erupted in murmurs as the evidence displayed messages, coordination, outcomes scripted in advance. The head administrator, Chancellor Rell, tried to regain control. These communications. A new voice cut through, heavy as stone. Then let us speak plainly. A Karuk entered the room larger than Rock, scar-lined, wearing clan markings that spoke of authority even to those who didn't understand them. Rock rose immediately, posture respectful. The newcomer's ember eyes fixed on the administrators. I am Carthan of the Ashward clans, he said, voice like boulder shifting. I was told this academy values knowledge. I was told it welcomes sapient minds. Have I traveled to a place that lies about itself? No one answered quickly. Carthan's gaze moved to Rock. My kin has harmed no one. He has excelled. If you remove him for what he is instead of what he does, then your charter is ink without meaning. The words fell with the weight of consequence. Chancellor Rell looked at the board members whose names now sat beside incriminating messages. 2 of them avoided eye contact. Finally, Rell cleared his throat. In light of the presented testimony and evidence of improper external influence, he said tightly, the board rules to maintain current placement. Student Rock remains in general classes under standard policy. The room broke into relief cheers, applause, voices overlapping like waves. Rock's hand found Mara's shoulder again. This time, when she looked up, she saw something steadier than joy. She saw belonging. By the end of the year, Rock being in. A general classroom was still unusual, but it was no longer unthinkable. Mara and Rock started a student group, the Bridgework Society, where species compared adaptations, studied together, and argued about ethics with the same intensity they argued about equations. The prey species kid became vice coordinator. Even Valen attended sometimes. He sat in the back. He listened more than he spoke. On the last day of term, Mara and Rock sat on the observation deck and watched starlight slide across the station glass. "We changed something," Rock said. Mara nodded. "Not enough, but something." Rock's rumbling laugh vibrated the bench when Mara added, "Also, the cafeteria still can't season food properly. I'm filing a complaint." "Agreed," Rock said solemnly, and then his eyes warmed. "A serious one." Mara opened her tablet and started making notes for next semester club expansion, policy proposals, better accessibility standards for bodies that didn't match the station's default assumptions. Beside her, Rock did. The same careful claws tapping the screen with surprising gentleness. The future wasn't fixed, but it was workable. And for two kids from worlds that tried to kill them, that felt like the beginning of something big.